The hospital bills scattered across the kitchen table told a story Mia Park wished she could rewrite. Her father's cancer treatment had drained their savings, and now the collection notices arrived daily like unwelcome guests. She traced her finger along the final notice, 30 days to pay $200,000 or lose everything. Mia Ya, her mother's voice trembled from the doorway. There's someone here to see you. The man who entered their modest apartment commanded attention despite his silence. Jin Woo Kang, CEO of Kang Industries, stood in their cramped living room like a piece of expensive art in a thrift store. His tailored suit probably cost more than their monthly rent. Miss Park, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I have a proposition. Mia's mother bowed deeply, recognizing the family name that graced half the buildings in Seoul. But Mia remained seated, studying the man who held their fate in his manicured hands. Your family owes my company a substantial amount, he continued, placing a contract on their coffee table. I'm prepared to clear your debt entirely. Hope flickered in Mia's chest before his next words extinguished it. In exchange for a marriage contract, 1 year. No emotional attachments, no expectations beyond public appearances. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Mia looked at her sleeping father through the bedroom door, then at her mother's desperate expression. The weight of their circumstances pressed down on her shoulders. What makes you think I'd agree to such an arrangement? Jin Woo's expression remained impassive. Because you have no other choice. The truth of his words hit harder than any physical blow. Mia closed her eyes, feeling her freedom slip away like sand through her fingers. 3 days later, Mia sat in Jin Woo's corporate office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that made Seoul look like a miniature city. The marriage contract lay before her, each clause more impersonal than the last. Separate bedrooms, she read aloud. No public displays of affection beyond what's necessary for appearances. No interference in each other's personal lives. Jin Woo's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Secretary Kim, took notes silently in the corner. Jin Woo himself stood with his back to Mia, gazing out at the city he seemed to own. The arrangement benefits us both, he said without turning. My board requires a stable family image for the upcoming merger. Your family receives financial security. Mia's pen hovered over the signature line. Why me? Surely there are women more suitable for a CEO's wife. For the first time, Jin Woo faced her directly. His dark eyes held secrets she couldn't decipher. You're not connected to my social circle. No complications, no expectations of love. The word love fell from his lips like something distasteful. Mia wondered what had made him so cynical, but the thought disappeared as she remembered her father's medical bills. There's one condition I need to add, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Jin Woo raised an eyebrow. I want to continue working as a nurse. I won't be your decorative wife sitting at home. Something flickered across his features, surprise, perhaps even respect. Agreed. Mia signed her name with steady hands, sealing a fate she never could have imagined. As the ink dried, she wondered if she'd just saved her family or sacrificed her soul. Jin Woo collected the contract with businesslike efficiency. The wedding is in 2 weeks. Secretary Kim will handle the arrangements. The bridal boutique felt like stepping into a fairy tale Mia had never wanted to live. Yards of silk and satin surrounded her, while Secretary Kim efficiently coordinated with the staff. Jin Woo had insisted on the best, though he couldn't be bothered to attend the fitting himself. This one, Secretary Kim pointed to an elegant dress with clean lines and minimal embellishment. Simple, sophisticated, perfect for the image we're creating. Mia studied her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger, polished, expensive, empty. The dress fit perfectly, but she felt like she was wearing a costume for a role she'd never auditioned for. "Mr. Kang has arranged for you to move into the penthouse tomorrow," Secretary Kim continued, checking items off her tablet. "Your belongings will be transferred and a car will collect you at 9 a.m. The efficiency of it all made Mia's head spin. Her entire life was being reorganized like a corporate restructuring. That evening, she sat with her parents in their small apartment for what might be the last time as their unmarried daughter. Her father, though weak from treatment, held her hand with surprising strength. "Are you certain about this, daughter?" Mia forced a smile. "It's just business, Appa. 1 year and our family will be secure." Her mother fussed over dinner, preparing all of Mia's favorite dishes as if she were going away to war instead of marriage. In a way, perhaps she was. Later, alone in her childhood bedroom, Mia packed her few possessions. A photo of her family, her nursing textbooks, the small jewelry box her grandmother had given her. Everything that mattered fit into 2 suitcases. Tomorrow, she would become Mrs. Kang Jin Woo. Tonight, she was still just Mia Park, a nurse who loved her family enough to sacrifice her dreams. The ceremony took place in a private room at Seoul's most exclusive hotel. Despite the intimate setting, everything felt grand and cold, like a business merger disguised as a celebration. Mia wore the chosen dress and a smile that felt painted on her face. Jin Woo stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his expression as unreadable as always. When their eyes met, she searched for any hint of emotion, but found only professional courtesy. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, while both bride and groom knew the words were meaningless. When Jin Woo slipped the ring onto her finger, his touch was brief and impersonal. Mia's hands trembled slightly, but she managed to return the gesture with practiced composure. "You may kiss the bride." The moment stretched between them like an eternity. Jin Woo leaned forward, his lips barely brushing hers in the most chaste kiss possible. It lasted seconds but felt like a lifetime of pretense. The small gathering of witnesses, mostly Jin Woo's business associates and a few family members, applauded politely. Mia's parents sat in the front row, her mother dabbing at tears that might have been joy or sorrow. During the reception, Jin Woo played the attentive husband perfectly. He guided her through conversations with his colleagues, his hand resting lightly on her back in a gesture that looked intimate but felt like a business transaction. "Mrs. Kang," people addressed her, and each time the name felt foreign on her ears. As the evening wound down, reality settled over Mia like a heavy coat. She was married to a stranger, bound by contract rather than love. The ring on her finger caught the light, beautiful and cold as the man who had placed it there. Jin Woo's penthouse awaited, along with a new life she wasn't sure she was ready to live. Jin Woo's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a gleaming tower in Gangnam. As the private elevator rose silently upward, Mia felt like she was ascending to another world entirely. The doors opened to reveal a space that belonged in an architecture magazine. All clean lines, expensive materials, and stunning views of Seoul's skyline. "Your room is on the 2nd floor, Jin Woo said, his tone as neutral as if he were giving directions to a hotel guest. "The housekeeper, Mrs. Choi, will show you around tomorrow." He gestured toward a spiral staircase that seemed to float without support. Everything in the apartment spoke of wealth and taste, but nothing suggested warmth or personality. "I leave for work at 7, he continued. "I rarely return before 9. You're free to use any of the common areas, but my study is off limits." Mia nodded, feeling like a tenant receiving house rules rather than a wife coming home. She followed him upstairs to a bedroom that was larger than her family's entire apartment. The space was beautiful but sterile, decorated in shades of cream and gray that matched the emotional temperature of their arrangement. "If you need anything, Mrs. Choi can assist you. I've arranged for a credit card to be delivered tomorrow for household expenses." Jin Woo paused at the doorway, and for a moment Mia thought he might say something personal. Instead, he simply nodded once and disappeared down the hallway. Alone in the vast bedroom, Mia sat on the edge of the king-sized bed and looked out at the city lights below. Somewhere in those lights was her family's small apartment, where her parents were probably worrying about her first night as a married woman. She unpacked her 2 suitcases, her modest belongings looking lost in the enormous walk-in closet. Tomorrow, she would start her new life as Mrs. Jin Woo, a role she had no idea how to play. 3 weeks into their marriage, Mia and Jin Woo had perfected the art of polite coexistence. They moved through the penthouse like ships passing in the night, their interactions limited to brief encounters in the kitchen or hallway. Mia had returned to work at Seoul National Hospital, grateful for the familiar routine of caring for patients. Her colleagues treated her differently now. Whispers followed her down corridors, and she caught nurses Googling her husband's name when they thought she wasn't looking. Mrs. Kang, Dr. Lee addressed her during morning rounds, the title still sounding strange. "How are you adjusting to married life?" Mia forced a smile. "Very well, thank you." But the truth was more complicated. Living with Jin Woo was like sharing space with a polite stranger who happened to be devastatingly handsome and completely emotionally unavailable. He left for work before she woke and returned after she'd gone to bed. Their only communication came through Mrs. Choi, the housekeeper who seemed to serve as their unofficial mediator. "Mr. Kang will be attending a charity gala Thursday evening," Mrs. Choi informed her over breakfast. "He's requested you accompany him." These public appearances were part of their contract, carefully orchestrated performances for Seoul's elite society. Mia had learned to play her role, the devoted wife who gazed adoringly at her successful husband while he networked with other powerful men. That evening, she found a designer gown hanging in her closet with a note from Secretary Kim detailing the event's importance. As she prepared for another night of pretending, Mia wondered how long she could maintain this facade. In the mirror, she practiced her smile, the one that suggested she was blissfully happy rather than slowly disappearing into a life that wasn't really hers. The reflection showed Mrs. Kang Jin Woo, but inside, Mia Park was still fighting to survive. The charity gala was held at the Grand Hyatt. Seoul's elite gathered to donate money they'd never miss to causes they'd never think about again. Mia wore the designated gown, a midnight blue creation that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and played her part perfectly. Jin Woo guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, his hand on her lower back as they moved from group to group. To observers, they looked like the perfect power couple. But Mia felt the distance between them like a physical barrier. "Jin Woo see!" An older man approached with a woman who could only be his wife, both dripping with jewelry and self-importance. "You must introduce us to your lovely bride." "This is my wife, Mia," Jin Woo said smoothly. "Darling, meet Chairman Park and his wife." The endearment rolled off his tongue like a well-rehearsed line. Mia smiled and bowed appropriately, letting the conversation flow around her while she observed Jin Woo's performance. He was masterful at this, charming, confident, completely in control, but she caught something else in unguarded moments. When he thought no one was watching, his expression grew distant, almost melancholy. There were depths to Jin Woo Kang that his public persona carefully concealed. During dinner, seated beside him at the head table, Mia noticed his phone buzzing repeatedly. Each message seemed to increase his tension, though his smile never wavered. "Is everything all right?" she whispered during the auction portion of the evening. Jin Woo's eyes met hers, and for a split second, she saw something vulnerable flash across his features before the mask slipped back into place. "Just business," he replied, but his jaw was tight with worry. Later, in the car ride home, the silence between them felt different, charged with unspoken concerns rather than mere indifference. Mia found herself wanting to ask what was troubling him, but their contract didn't include emotional support. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that beneath Jin Woo's perfect exterior, something was breaking apart. Mia's shift at the hospital had been particularly challenging. A difficult surgery, 2 emergency admissions, and a family receiving devastating news about their patriarch's condition. She was emotionally drained as she changed out of her scrubs, looking forward to the quiet sanctuary of the penthouse. As she walked through the hospital's main corridor toward the exit, a familiar figure caught her attention. Jin Woo stood near the elevator bank, but this wasn't the composed CEO she knew. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and his face bore an expression of raw anguish she'd never seen before. He was talking urgently with Dr. Kim, the head of cardiology, their conversation too distant for her to hear, but clearly serious. Jin Woo's hands were clenched at his sides, his entire body radiating tension. Mia hesitated, torn between respecting his privacy and the instinct to help that made her a good nurse. Before she could decide, Jin Woo turned and saw her. For a moment their eyes locked across the busy hallway, and she saw him completely unguarded, vulnerable, frightened, human. Then the mask slammed back into place. He straightened his tie, composed his features, and walked past her without acknowledgement, as if she were just another hospital employee rather than his wife. But Mia had seen enough. Whatever had brought Jin Woo to the hospital wasn't business. It was personal, and it was tearing him apart. That evening, she waited in the penthouse's living room, something she'd never done before. When Jin Woo finally came home at nearly midnight, he stopped short at seeing her there. "You don't need to wait up for me," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I saw you at the hospital today." Jin Woo's composure cracked slightly. "That's not your concern." "Maybe it should be," Mia replied softly. "We may not have a real marriage, but we don't have to be strangers." For a long moment, Jin Woo studied her face, as if trying to determine whether her offer was genuine. Then he turned away. "Some things are better left private, Mrs. Kang." The truth came to Mia in pieces, like a puzzle she hadn't realized she was solving. It started with Mrs. Choi mentioning that Jin Woo's father had been ill for months, followed by overhearing a phone conversation about treatment options and experimental procedures. The final piece fell into place when she recognized the room number Jin Woo had been visiting, the same floor where she worked in the cardiac intensive care unit. Mr. Kang Sr. was her patient. She'd been caring for him for weeks without knowing the connection. He was listed under his full name, Kang Jae-hyun, and she'd never made the association. The elderly man with the weak heart and kind eyes was Jin Woo's father. Everything suddenly made sense. Jin Woo's frequent absences, his tension during the charity gala, his anguish in the hospital corridor. He'd been carrying this burden alone while maintaining his perfect public image. That evening, Mia found Jin Woo in his study, the room he'd declared off-limits. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see him slumped over his desk, his head in his hands. Medical reports were scattered across the surface, along with what looked like research on experimental treatments. She knocked softly. "Jin Woo?" He looked up, startled, then quickly gathered the papers. "I thought I made it clear this room was private." "Your father is my patient," she said simply. Jin Woo froze, the papers still clutched in his hands. The carefully constructed walls between them crumbled in that moment, leaving them both exposed. "You didn't know," he said, and it wasn't a question. Mia shook her head. "Not until today. He's been asking about his son, wondering why you don't visit during the day." Jin Woo's composure finally shattered. "I can't let him see me weak. He needs to believe I have everything under control." "He needs to see that you care," Mia replied gently. "And you need to know that he's going to be okay. The surgery next week has an excellent success rate." For the first time since their wedding, Jin Woo looked at her not as a contract wife, but as the skilled nurse she was. Someone who might actually be able to help him through the most frightening experience of his life. The next morning, Mia did something that went far beyond their contractual obligations. She rearranged her schedule to be Mr. Kang's primary nurse during the day shift, ensuring she could provide Jin Woo with real-time updates about his father's condition. Jin Woo appeared in the cardiac unit during lunch, looking uncertain for the first time since she'd known him. Mia met him at the nurse's station, professional but warm. "He's been asking for you," she said softly. "He knows you've been visiting at night." "How?" "Fathers always know." Mia led him toward the room. "He's proud of you, but he's also worried. He thinks you're avoiding him because you're disappointed in his weakness." Jin Woo stopped walking. "Disappointed? He's the strongest man I know." "Then tell him that." The reunion between father and son was private, but Mia could see through the glass partition as Jin Woo took his father's hand. The powerful CEO who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals looked like a scared little boy beside his father's hospital bed. Later, Jin Woo found Mia in the break room during her coffee break. He sat across from her at the small table, and for the first time, they were just two people sharing a quiet moment. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'm just doing my job." "No, you're not." His dark eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're being kind to a man who's given you no reason to care about his problems." Mia studied his face, seeing past the perfect features to the exhaustion and fear he'd been hiding. "Everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're scared." "I'm not scared," he said automatically, then caught himself. "I wasn't supposed to be scared." "Being scared means you love someone," Mia replied. "That's not weakness, it's the most human thing there is." Something shifted between them in that sterile break room, surrounded by the sounds of the hospital. The wall Jin Woo had built around himself developed its first real crack, and Mia found herself wanting to help him tear it down completely. The morning of Mr. Kang's surgery, Jin Woo arrived at the hospital before dawn. Mia found him in the family waiting area, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his usually perfect appearance disheveled from a sleepless night. "You should go home and rest," she said, sitting beside him on the uncomfortable plastic chair. "I can't leave him." Mia understood. She'd seen countless families in this same position, torn between hope and terror while their loved ones fought for life in operating rooms. But seeing Jin Woo, always so controlled and confident, reduced to this vulnerable state, touched something deep in her heart. "Dr. Kim is the best cardiac surgeon in Seoul," she assured him. "Your father is in excellent hands." Jin Woo nodded, but didn't seem convinced. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap, knuckles white with tension. Without thinking, Mia reached over and covered his hands with hers. The contact was electric, the first real, spontaneous touch they'd shared since their wedding day. Jin Woo looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face, surprise flickering in his dark eyes. "You don't have to go through this alone," she said softly. For a moment, Jin Woo's carefully constructed defenses crumbled completely. "I've been alone for so long I forgot what it felt like to have someone care." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to build. Mia felt her own walls beginning to crack, the professional distance she'd maintained starting to dissolve. "I care," she whispered, and realized with startling clarity that it was true. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Mia stayed with Jin Woo the entire time, bringing him coffee, updating him on the procedure's progress, and simply being present when words weren't enough. When Dr. Kim finally emerged with news of the successful operation, Jin Woo's relief was so profound that Mia felt tears spring to her own eyes. "Thank you," he said again. But this time the words carried weight beyond gratitude. They carried the beginning of something neither had planned for. In the days following his father's surgery, Jin Woo became a different person. The cold, distant CEO, who had married Mia for convenience, was replaced by a son devoted to his father's recovery, and gradually, a man who seemed to notice his wife for the first time. Mia coordinated Mr. Kang's care with meticulous attention, ensuring he had the best physical therapy, monitoring his medication, and providing updates that went far beyond what any nurse would typically offer. She did it not for Jin Woo, she told herself, but because she genuinely cared about her patient's well-being. But the truth was more complicated. Watching Jin Woo read to his father, seeing him laugh at the older man's jokes, observing the tenderness he showed when he thought no one was looking, it revealed depths to his character that made Mia's heart race in ways their contract had never intended. "You've been working extra shifts," Jin Woo observed one evening as they shared a rare dinner together in the penthouse. Mrs. Choi had prepared a simple meal, and for once they were eating at the same time. "Your father needs consistent care during this critical period," Mia replied, focusing on her soup to avoid his gaze. "That's not the only reason." Mia looked up to find Jin Woo studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was something different in his eyes, warmer, more present. "I've been thinking about our arrangement," he continued carefully. "Perhaps we've been too rigid in our boundaries." Mia's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you've shown me more genuine kindness in the past week than I've experienced in years. It seems foolish to pretend we're strangers when we're clearly capable of being friends." Friends. The word should have felt like progress, but instead it left Mia with an unexpected sense of disappointment. She was beginning to want more than friendship from Jin Woo, though she wasn't ready to admit it even to herself. "Friends would be nice," she agreed, though her voice sounded hollow to her own ears. Jin Woo smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one he wore for business associates. "Good. Then perhaps you'd join me for dinner tomorrow, as friends." Mia nodded, wondering how she'd managed to fall for a man who was supposed to be nothing more than a contractual obligation. Mr. Kang was scheduled to be discharged the following week, his recovery progressing better than anyone had dared hope. Jin Woo's relief was evident in everything from his improved posture to the way he'd started humming unconsciously while working in his study. Mia found herself looking forward to their evening conversations, which had become a regular occurrence since they'd declared themselves friends. Jin Woo was intelligent and surprisingly funny when he let his guard down, and she discovered they shared interests in literature, classical music, and a mutual love of old movies. But friendship was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain when every accidental touch sent electricity through her body, and every genuine smile from Jin Woo made her heart flutter like a teenager with her first crush. The crisis came on a rainy Thursday evening. Mia was working late, covering for a colleague who'd called in sick when she received an urgent call about Mr. Kang. His blood pressure had spiked dangerously, and he was asking for his son. She called Jin Woo immediately, her professional calm barely concealing her personal worry. He arrived at the hospital within minutes, his hair damp from the rain, his face pale with fear. "What happened?" he demanded as they hurried toward the cardiac unit. "Probably just anxiety about going home," Mia assured him. "It's common after major surgery, but we need to monitor him overnight." They spent the night in Mr. Kang's room, Jin Woo holding his father's hand while Mia monitored his vital signs. Around 3 a.m., the older man's breathing finally settled into the peaceful rhythm of natural sleep. "He's going to be fine," Mia whispered, checking his chart one final time. Jin Woo looked up at her from his chair beside the bed, his eyes bright with unshed tears of relief. "I don't know what I would have done without you these past weeks." "You would have managed. You're stronger than you think." "No." Jin Woo stood slowly, moving closer to where she stood by the window. I've been pretending to be strong for so long, I forgot what real strength looked like. You showed me." The space between them seemed to crackle with unspoken emotion. Mia's breath caught as Jin Woo reached up to touch her cheek gently. "Mia," he whispered, her name sounding different on his lips than it ever had before. "I think I'm falling in love with you." The confession hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs as she searched Jin Woo's face, looking for any sign that he might take the words back. "You think," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet hospital room. Jin Woo's thumb traced along her cheekbone, his touch gentle and reverent. "I know. I've known for days, maybe weeks. I just didn't know how to tell you. Our contract? Forget the contract." His other hand came up to frame her face, his dark eyes intense with emotion. "I want to know if there's any chance you could feel the same way." Mia's answer came not in words, but in the way she leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed as she allowed herself to feel everything she'd been suppressing. When she opened them again, Jin Woo was smiling, not his practiced business smile, but something soft and vulnerable and completely real. "I love you too," she admitted, the words feeling like a leap off a cliff and a safe landing all at once. Their first real kiss happened in a hospital room at dawn, with Jin Woo's father sleeping peacefully nearby and the sound of Seoul waking up outside the windows. It was nothing like their wedding kiss. This was tender, passionate, and full of promise. 6 months later, they renewed their vows in the same hotel where they'd first married. But this time, the ceremony was filled with genuine joy instead of obligation. Mr. Kang, fully recovered and beaming with pride, walked Mia down the aisle while Jin Woo waited at the altar with tears in his eyes. "I love you, Mrs. Kang," he whispered as they exchanged new rings, simple bands they'd chosen together, nothing like the expensive set from their contract wedding. "I love you too, Mr. Kang," Mia replied, and this time the name felt like it truly belonged to her. Their marriage had begun as a business transaction, but it had become something neither had dared to dream of, a love story built on kindness, trust, and the courage to let someone see your heart when it's breaking. As they danced at their reception, surrounded by family and friends who knew their real story, Mia marveled at how love had found them in the most unexpected place. Sometimes the best things in life came disguised as obligations, and sometimes saving someone else's heart was the only way to heal your own.